Hi, sweeties. How are you doing? Welcome to Naya Sim or Naya, and thank you all so much for all the love and support. Hope you all are doing great. So you all remember, I think 1980s, 1990s, when there was crack epidemic in Black community, right? Which was really not a very good period because that really took away a lot of people's money, took away a lot of, took set back a lot of young men and also sent some to prison and some incarcerated and all that, right? And that was really not a very good period. And during the investigation, at some point, I think you all remember there was a time I talked about drug epidemic in Black community, which CIA was also kind of responsible for that. And now I have no idea why they are started all of a sudden started being scared that migrants are bringing in into the country, right? And I remember that I brought a video where a woman was like, it's almost a Halloween, that they are really very scared that they might come in with us and give it to the kids during trick or treat, right? And we do not know how they come about that, but then this is what they are spreading around. Now, I am going to ask you, why is it that recently it's really been Haitians doing so many things? Because I do not see you people ask yourself, how did they? Because looking around, I did not see Black people being the real leader or kingpin when it comes to that. Are they not asking themselves questions how that is coming into or being shipped into the country? Let's get into this video.
Quick question. Is it just me, or does anybody else remember the crack epidemic of the 80s and 90s and how it was dealt with by our government? You all remember that the task force assigned to deal with the crack epidemic of the 80s and 90s that devastated black and brown communities were those carrying guns and badges, not stethoscopes and white coats. Does anybody else remember when we pointed out that no one in the community owned any ships that were bringing drugs into this country to be sold in our community? That they pointed out that it was our responsibility not to take the drugs that were being sold and shipped into our community? Anybody remember that? So explain to me, in the present opioid and fentanyl crisis, how all of a sudden everybody is blaming migrants and immigration for the drug problems in their communities now. I'm not hearing the same arguments being made about bad parenting and you all should make better decisions. All I'm hearing is that everybody is blaming it on where the drugs come from and not on the people doing the drugs. I wonder what's the difference. Anybody? So I made a video earlier, and you can follow this comment back to that video if you need more context than I'm going to provide in the opening. But I made a video earlier talking about the differences in how crack epidemics were treated during the 80s and 90s, and how opioid and fentanyl epidemics, crises, are treated now in relationship to blame. Now, I feel like a lot of people missed the part where I said, so explain to me, in the present opioid and fentanyl crisis, how all of a sudden everybody is blaming migrants and immigration for the drug problems in their communities now. And maybe in my video somewhere my articulation of that point was missed. See, I was trying to point out that beyond the conversations I normally have had about how it was treated by the government when it affected black and brown communities as opposed to white communities, was the inability of the white community to take responsibility like they were asking the black communities to do in the 80s and 90s by blaming the current surge of addiction and fentanyl deaths in the white community on black and brown immigrants. I was hoping that that question will be taken in the manner to show that the far right, Trump supporters, MAGA supporters, wherever you want to call them, I call them racist bigots and rocket raccoons, are using the issue of immigration to shore up their ideological platform by blaming everything that they say is wrong in this country on immigrants, from the economy to taxes to everything but abortion. And that is why Donald Trump uses the xenophobic rhetoric he does to blame black and brown immigrants instead of the people that he is actually talking to taking the blame for their actions. See, just like the reality that Americans smuggle more fentanyl into the country than migrants, see, the far right wants to blame the country's problems on black and brown people instead of the reality that their chickens are coming home to roost in their yards. Quick question. Is it just me, or does anybody else remember the crack epidemic?
To answer your question, fentanyl was already here way before the migrant immigration started. Because even in the pandemic, they were basically finding a lot of people extorting, distributing, selling. People were dropping like flies with fentanyl and stuff like that before they started with the migrants coming in here and the overpopulation, all that stuff. Just to answer your question, okay? When we had the COVID, every time you turn around, somebody was dropping like flies with the fentanyl and with the opium and other narcotics that they were using. But let me tell you the story. Picture it. This was going back in 1988, going into 1993, and even earlier in the 80s. But going into the 90s, I'm going to tell you. It was Christopher Columbus Day. They were going around with the help of this man, also this man, who was a prosecutor. But there was somebody else that was up at the same level as him that gave the hit to do the interrogation, no knock warrant, intruding into people's place, because the DA and the task force was doing the sweep around there during that time. He didn't say nothing to the fellow New Yorkers because they did not hit Manhattan. They hit places in the Bronx, they hit places in Brooklyn, places in Uptown, and places in Queens, but mostly in the urban development places where the projects were at. Now it was Christopher Columbus, no school day, everybody's outside doing their thing, whatever. Then we got to find out a whole task force started coming out and doing a Christmas sweep and sweeping around the place. Okay? Drugs was coming here because of the help of Reagan and even the Bush administration. But you got Nancy Reagan telling people don't say no to drugs. Okay? Knowing that her husband had brought this stuff and infiltrated into the black neighborhoods. But when it started spreading all worldwide, because during that Christmas sweep, I never forget it, it was hitting Baltimore, it was hitting Detroit, it was hitting Chicago, it was hitting everywhere. And history have a way of repeating itself, because I always tell people, where does the drugs come from? Just like in the West Indies, where the guns and the drugs come from, considering the gang people don't know where these guns are coming from. So you don't think it's coming from the military and from the higher up, okay? And United States always like to play the blame game and always like to point the finger, thinking that people of urban development have time to be cooking up no cocaine and stuff like that. No, for real, okay? And it always hit because this is what Reagan had done. Similar to all these governors and all these politicians and so forth. They will use the immigration situation, because that's what Reagan had done previously before, as a scapegoat. But meanwhile, drugs was coming in here. And it wasn't coming through only from the immigration, because I remember back in the days in 1984, when Cuba turned around and brought all the Cubans out there. They were bringing all the people from the crazy house, from jails and stuff, and they went to South Jamaica. And they were trying to say that the crime was coming from the immigration and was coming from people because they were ex-gang and stuff like that. Crime was already in here, okay, because drugs was already in here. That was just a distraction, okay, similar to what the effect is right now here too, okay, because number one, Each immigrant back in those days, in his days, they had to go to immigration and they had to pre-screen them. And they still, even though they knew from their tattoos, their this and everything, they still brought them inside here. So like I said, it's the same people that's what's happening today is happening yesterday. Because this was duck season for the DEA and task force where they can get money. Like I said, history repeats itself because this happened in June in 2024 when NYC police seized narcotics worth around $10 million of major drug bust. That is all they found. Okay, so it's nothing new. First of all, whether these police officers and TEs and tax and whatever in the Justice League, they turn around and they claim they do stakeouts, they do undercover watch, they do this and everything. But how they find out so quickly that these drugs are there, okay, unless somebody snitched or somebody got caught or whatever the situation is. But let me paddle you. Now, this was a statistics back in the days where they looked at the list of defenders and looked at the ratio of it for drug offenders, 64 to 43 to 44. Just look at it. Look at it. And guess what? That wasn't back then. This is now. And they even said back then, they said during the numbers of states and federals rose substantially from 789, 610, 100,000 to almost 1.2 billion, from 59% in just 7 years. And this was a ratio from going back in the 90s. So imagine what the percentage of the prison pop is with the fentanyl and with the smack. Okay? Like I said, if drugs is not born where people can grow it in their backyard, so where the hell is it coming from? And like I say, from even foreign countries and even here, if we don't own a gun and we don't have a factory to have a gun, well, I don't know if United States do. How the hell these things are coming here? And they saying it's the immigration, bear to differ. Remember, some people in the higher up, they have airplanes. They have boats. Okay? People will look the opposite way for them. Some of them own import-export shipping companies. Okay? And they're the same people that's in that White House that's making up these bills and want to be exempt from taxes. And I'm talking behind the scenes, allegedly, not the people that's working for them. Okay? Sometimes it's the people that's billionaires and they're foreigners that's coming over here and bringing all that stuff like they virus come to them. And I'm saying allegedly. Sometimes you got to say to yourself, okay? I remember when they were doing an interview with the president he was a spokesperson for Mexico, and he was speaking in his language. And they were saying, oh, the fentanyl is coming over there from your country and everything. The man said no. He said, it's coming from China. He said just like that. He said, it's coming from China, and they do it in a synthetic way to be transferring over here to Mexico. But he said it's not coming from Mexico. He said the same way you guys are transporting stuff and products and goods and stuff, they doing it over there. That's what he said like that. But he said it in his language. Okay? They're ready with minorities like this. They're ready to point the finger and throw us in the slammer. But with this, they don't say nothing. They don't say nothing. They don't say nothing at all. This is a good topic.
So this is all I got from these, and I really don't know why recently it's been migrants, it's been Haitians, it's been these people, like, bringing in into the country and all that. When I said I mean, right? But the truth is that did the CIA, did they not they planted that in Black community back then, that you know they did that in order, like, really only heaven knows why they did that, but you all already know why they did that, right? And that actually caused so much harm in Black community, because at some point a lot of people started doing that and they confessed to it. right? They did confess to planting that in Black community, war on drugs, right? And I don't think that is new. I don't think it's something that it was not like, it was something that it's open, that they talked about how they planted that. Why? Because they probably do not want good things to come out of, my community. And they just do not want the best, because to them all they wanted was to look for a way to, like, destabilize the youth and all that, because they're already, like, the truth is that some people really can be very mean and all that. I mean, you took away some people's thing, forced them away, they went out again, like, they have moved from places to places, I mean, looking for a way to better themselves. And then you decided, like, we still do not want them to prosper. We still do not want them to be useful. So they decided to use that and get so many people. Somewhere in Casa, somewhere also, like, they were also selling that to them. They were buying, and they were also catching them. So you can imagine how mean people could be, or you can, like, to do something like this, sold something to somebody and also send the other person to go and catch the person. Before you know what is going on, jail or incarceration and the rest of it, right? And then they are turning back to say that it's also that it is migrants that are coming with a drug, like, to come into the country, and they are, like, the ones, like, making it spread all over. And you all remember that there is, I think I have posted that video where a woman is, like, kind of worried that migrants are going to come into the country, and it's almost Halloween, and they are going to share out to the kids, that they are very worried about it. And how did they, like, come about that? And all these stories started coming out since after these Haitians eating pets and cats and dogs and all that. That was when, because they tried with Venezuela. Those people, they said that invaded this in Venezuela, and that one did not work. And now Haitians become the problem now, and the rest of it. So the truth is that why are they looking for a way to drag migrants into this when they were the first people that started planting that in other people's community? See you all in my next video. Bye for now.